Hey guys, this is Jill and Darren with Stoic Events Podcast.
And we're talking all things wedding and event planning. But you know we're not stopping there as we dive headfirst into topical issues related to life, relationships, and overall well-being.
Get ready to have some open and honest conversations as we enjoy this brief dream called life.
This is the Stoic Events Podcast.
So, anyway, welcome back, everybody. Stoic Events Podcast. We're going to be talking about marriage in this episode, right? But specifically, the first year of your marriage.
And the thing is we're going to talk about things that we have been through our first year of marriage. But let me give you a little bit of a backstory, because nowadays...
How long have we been together, Jill? Do we have room to speak on this topic?
I think so. We're going on 30 years this year of marriage.
30, baby.
How many years together altogether, though? Married 30.
An additional 3 or so on top of that. So married for 30. So we're going to talk about some marriage things that you might go through in your first year.
Nowadays, a lot of people live together before they get married. Some people are not, like the traditional way was not to live together before you got married. We did not live together before we got married. We both grew up in religious homes. So that was just something that we never even entertained or wanted to do. We knew there was not an option for that.
No bueno.
Yeah, there was not an option for that.
You weren't allowed to live together. So when we got married, it was Jill and I dated we went to a private school in upstate New York, and we dated a half hour away on either side, east and west, to that school. Right. So we were only able to see each other during school year, and during summer we didn't see each other. So
a little bit, but not much.
A little.
It was our relationship was a lot like it was longest relationship. So when we finally did get married and move in together, it was interesting. And not only that, but we got married. So
interesting is a good word.
I graduated in June, turned 18 in July, got married in August. So yeah, we got married really young. So there was a lot of different things that we went through. So our first year of marriage was not the most blissful. It was at times, but then there was times where we really struggled, and we've learned a lot over the years of the reasons why we struggled and things that I wish people would have told us. You know, our pastors were awesome, the ones that married us, and they did premarital counseling. You know, that usually is what they do. And they didn't do it with us because they knew that we were just like that. We were that couple, right? Well, so they're like, let us go over your wedding, you know, but never really gave us any kind of counseling because they just knew we were solid.
Everybody knew that.
But however, I do wish they would have given us some of the tidbits we're about to give you guys.
It would have been really nice if they said, I know you think you got it all figured out, but there's some simple things that are going to happen here. They're really simple things that could potentially lead into some really big, explosive problems if you don't have civilized conversations and just have a conversation about some of these things. So I say we get right into it and talk about it.
And the thing too is you got to remember that every couple, they're coming from 2 different families, right?
2 different worlds, man.
So like, how were you raised? Well, how would you describe your family?
I was raised really conservative. I went to private schools my whole life. I went to church 3-4 times a week. So it was private schools, church, a very controlled environment of what you're going to do. Very structured, not a lot of decision making on my part during those years, because that's just what it was. So when I got out and we got together, you're hit with, wow, I can do whatever I want to do. I can make any decision I want. That is something that you got to have conversations about, like your money and your emotions and how you're going to spend time together. We're going to get into that. But raised very conservative, so when I'm thrown into this world, you see the opportunity to not have any idea about how to deal with some of these situations.
Well, how would you say though? Like, what were you taught about like marriage relationships with your parents?
With my parents?
Yeah. Because you know what they say, that we emulate what we're grown up in, right? So like, I heard this story. This is kind of a little bit off topic, but you'll get the idea when I get done. They say, you know, this one lady always cut the end of the ham off.
Oh, I like
and so, story, you know, she did that. Someone said, why do you do that? Well, my mom did it. Well, that's interesting. Why did your mom do it? Well, I don't know. Let me ask her. Ask her mom. I did it because grandma did it. Well, why did grandma do it? I don't know. I just did it because grandma did it. Get a hold of grandma. And grandma says, I did it because I had to make it fit in my pan. So there really was no reason. So it's like we do that. We emulate stuff that we've been seen and shown
You
and
don't even
taught,
ask why you do
and
it.
we don't even know why we do it. Right. So like,
Yeah.
and that's why I ask you, like, what did you see in your parents' relationship that you thought a marriage should be like when we got married?
Well, it was not very Is this a word? We've debated this for years.
It is a word. We looked it up, remember?
Right. They're not very communicative with
Yeah.
each other. You know,
Or not in front of you guys anyway.
Right.
Mhm.
But what I think what a lot of people saw, I won't make mine too personal, but I think what a lot of people saw was like their parents just absolutely not communicate with each other. It would turn into a big blowout or a big fight, and then there would be resentment, and then there would be debating back and forth, and it was like, let's just get to like the root cause and some forgiveness and some growth and move on. But there was never really that. It was a lot of back and forth, rehashing a lot of the same fights and arguments over and over.
See, where my family, like, we went out of town a lot. My parents showed each other affection a lot. They went on date nights. They did get in a lot of knockdown, blowout fights that I was aware of, you know. So I kind of had this like weird balance of how family was. Like my parents showed affection. Like it was not.
Yeah.
There was a ton of affection shown to not just us kids, but those to each other as well. So.
Well, I think that's, you know, when you have communication that you're watching as you grow up, right? Every child's watching how their parents communicate to each other. They're watching how they communicate to the child themselves, and they're also watching how they're communicating with each other. They're watching their conflict resolution. I think that's huge right there. That's what you're getting at. Like, how did your parents resolve conflict? Did they keep rehashing the same thing? Okay, well, if that's a problem, well, now we got to get into the first thing we're going to talk about is communication. Communication is everything. Transparent, on the table, vulnerable communication.
Well, you need to communicate. Like, you have to realize, okay, we took this class. I wish we would have taken it way early on, but what was it called? Do you remember? You know which class I'm talking about?
Is it where they saw the pink and the purple?
Yeah, blue.
It was a class where a guy spoke about basically long story short, that women would speak in a pink language and men would speak in a purple language. And as a colorblind guy, I can kind of relate to that because there's no deviating off of a color. Like, so when they talk a certain way, you might only see a certain color, or you might be limited to see a certain color. And you don't understand that color language, right?
That's interesting because I didn't take it that, right? No, I didn't take it that way at all. No. I took it like, you know, we're saying the exact same words.
Yeah, but they're different.
But they're meaning something different to me versus you. Like, let's say I'm wanting to go on this new diet fad, right? And then you decide to go out and get me a gift, and it has something. You're like, oh, she's been talking about wanting to do this thing. I'm gonna go buy her this, and then you get it for me, and I'm gonna be like, what the heck? You think I'm fat? You know? And when your thought behind it was, she's been talking about it. She wants it. I'm gonna give it to her. You don't do that. You don't ever buy your woman anything like that.
I've never done that.
No, you haven't. You haven't. It's just an example.
I'm a flowers guy.
No, you're definitely not that either, even though I've asked for that.
No, I was a good flower guy years ago. I've died off a little bit. I can make a comeback.
Okay.
I'll make a comeback.
Oh my gosh. When was the last time you got me flowers?
I don't know, a while ago.
Okay. Anyway, let's
Valentine's Day is coming up.
Yeah.
See, we're communicating here.
Yeah.
We choose what we want.
But you know, but it's serious though. You know, girls think one way and guys think another way, and it's okay. We just need to be aware of it. I think once it was brought to my attention that what he's saying sometimes doesn't always mean what he's saying, I have to ask him. So, okay, what I'm hearing you tell me is XYZ. Is that correct?
I think that's the biggest thing in a relationship. It could be a friend or, you know, a committed relationship. It is not what you say. It is 100% only what they hear.
Mm-hmm.
But even your kids, like your spouse and your kids, it is all about what they hear. It has nothing to do with what you said. And the sooner we figure that out, the better. Mm-hmm. Because we mean to say things. It's no different than like when you go up to your dog, right? You could yell at him top of your lungs, I love you. And the dog's going to be like, what the heck, man? Or you can look at him with the sweetest of eyes and say, I hate you. And he's going to start wagging his tail. You know, it's what he hears. Mm-hmm. He only hears your emotions and your tone and your vibe that you're giving him. Same thing with your spouse, right? Mm-hmm. You know, I might say, well, I asked you to do that, but really what you're doing is she's translating that as you're incompetent. So that's a whole big, deep conversation we can get into. But your communication with each other, you're going to have to fall on your sword a lot, both of us.
Well, and look at
real quick, to understand that what you say to your spouse is not always what they hear. It is not always what they hear. They're going to hear something different. So when you're saying it, you got to check it. Did you hear me right? I want to make sure you heard me right. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that.
Yeah. No. And like, the thing is, like, you're regardless whether you're moving in together for the first time or just getting married and you've lived together for the first, you've always been living together. There's still going to be that, holy crap, we are married now.
As a new relationship.
I can't just pick up and leave. There's like all these binding legal things that are happening. So like, relationships go through like a shift, and you have to remember that it's a shift for both of you, and you need to communicate your needs, your wants, your desires. Don't expect your spouse to all of a sudden be a mind reader and know exactly what you're thinking, exactly what you want. Yeah. It could be very emotional. You could be very emotional about it. Like some girls, they leave their home for the first time and they're sad. They miss their family, but that doesn't mean they're not happy to be with you. It's just they're going through emotions. Like, I know when we first got married, Darren had some spouse with depression.
I had what?
You stop it.
Did you say spousal depression?
Spouts of depression.
I thought you said. I'm like, I'd love to know what spousal depression is.
This guy.
I had bouts of depression. Basically, what that means is I was crazy manic depressive.
No, you were not that bad. He was not that bad. But I know that he wasn't necessarily happy with his upbringing and his current situation living at home. So I thought, naive 18-year-old, we're going to get married and everything's going to be great. You're going to be so happy. You won't be depressed anymore. Boy, was I wrong. He was still depressed.
Got some things you got to work out.
So I had a really hard time understanding, like, why the hell are you still depressed? Like, I am so madly in love with you and we're together. You should not be depressed. That was the root of our very first arguments, I think. I don't think we really had a hard time, like, picking an apartment together or putting our finances together. That wasn't a big deal for us at all. It was just my expectations going in, thinking this is gonna solve it all for him, and he's gonna be totally fine. And it didn't. He had to work through some stuff. I had to reassure him with some stuff, and obviously we grew up together. We were very young when we got married, so we went through a lot of different things, but I think that if we would have had a little bit more of an open line of communication and we learned to talk to each other, he could have reassured me that, honey, it has nothing to do with you. I just have to deal with some things inside, and I just need you to be here to be my support and help me through it and guide me, and then, because I was always like a people pleaser. So I thought, oh, well, I'm not doing enough, or I'm not good enough, or whatever. So it was kind of causing me to spiral a little bit. But like I said, if we had those forms of communication and we understood what each other was going through, and we had that help that we had learned later on in our marriage, that we speak a different language and we can talk to each other in a different way. Like, hey, you're doing this and I'm feeling like it's this. Am I feeling correctly, or am I misunderstanding what you're projecting? Right?
Yeah.
It would have helped so much.
Yep.
It would have so much.
A lot of that stuff you don't, especially when you're young and you're getting married young, like we were really young. You just don't have the cognitive skills to be able to have. You haven't developed that over time, and I think that's a big thing too. Is if you're young and you have problems in your marriage, or you have just communication problems, and you guys are always kind of like at each other, you got to get a mentor, man.
Yeah.
You have to get up. We'll talk about this in a second, but you have to get up underneath someone that. Well, actually, we'll get into it real quick. We'll get into that. Okay. I think the biggest thing with mentorship is anyone who gives you advice, you should always look at their life and say, does your life look like something that I would want? Right. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't look like that, you shouldn't take any of their advice. Zero of their advice.
Yeah, no.
A zero.
If their life isn't something you want,
don't
if their
listen
relationship
to
with their spouse is not a relationship you would want with your spouse, don't even go to them.
If they have a good relationship with their spouse and they have a nice car in the driveway, but they always complain about money, don't listen to their advice. Don't listen to people's advice who's not solid. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying.
I think it depends on the situation. Like if they have a rock solid marriage, but they're always complaining about money, I'd probably still take their marriage advice. I wouldn't take their money advice.
Limit to what you do, though, because everything is connected. How you do one thing is how you do everything. But if you can, even if you have a great marriage right now, and you guys are just brand new in your marriage, you could be less than 5 years in your marriage and have a great marriage. Still get a mentor. And by a mentor, it's just simply like get up underneath someone who's been there a little bit longer than you.
It could be your parents.
Yeah, and just hang out with them. Don't say, "Can you mentor me and teach me your ways? I'm a Padawan."
Oh my God.
You don't have to say that. You
can if you want to.
And there are coaches and mentors out there, but you just want to hang out and kind of observe people who are a lot longer in the game than you and have a genuine, transparent, happy relationship. I didn't say a marriage. I didn't say whatever they say, a relationship. If they have a great relationship, and you're going to see that, that's very transparent. You can't fake that. So if you're young, look for older people to say, "Hey, I know you're going to run into some problems. I'm not telling you how to do it, but this is how I got through it. Maybe this will help you." If they're not helping you, they're not helping you.
And don't forget, when you are in a conversation with your spouse, and doesn't even have to be a serious conversation. We didn't have this issue back when we were younger because we didn't have cell phones then. They didn't have
what
cell
issue?
phones.
Didn't have
I'm getting there. So where people are now like talking and they're on the phone. Yep. Yep. You're not listening. It's like that old saying with the guys are watching football and they're like watching football, and the wife's going and he's not really listening. It's the same thing now, but now it's worse because we have our phones. We have these devices. It's so easy to be like, yep. Did you hear what I just said? Yeah. Well, what did I say?
That's a killer right there.
And I think
when you ask them and they got nothing.
I struggle sometimes because I get on my phone and he's talking to me and I'm like, okay, Joe, stop. This is rude. Like, put your phone down and listen for a hot second. He might have something really good to say.
I might have something really good to say.
You never know what's going to come out of this guy's mouth sometimes.
I just want to pay attention, people.
But, before you get married, maybe you talk about what your expectations are of marriage. What are you thinking it's going to be about? Because then
that's so big.
Because like we go back to being raised by two different families. Like my thought of what a marriage looks like was what my parents emulated and what was around me. His thought of marriage was what was emulated and what was around him. So like, we need to make sure we talk about these things, especially if we don't really know the other family very well, because we were a long distance relationship, basically. We didn't really know the other family that well. We only knew what we were telling each other, right?
Yeah. You didn't really spend time. That's a good point. Like when you really if I spend time with your family and you spend time with my family, no judgment. You're really going to be like, oh, I can see maybe that's why they have these tendencies or why they're the way that they are, good and bad, right?
Yep.
I think that's such a big thing with your expectations, right? Never mind if you're just brand new married. What if you've been married for 30 years, right? You still have to go to each other and say, look, I got some expectations that I'd kind of like to see met.
Well, here's the thing, too. Like you said, we've been married for almost August 6th, it'll be 30 years, okay? Now, when we first got married, we were young. We were in love. Everything was great. We had some blowout fights. It was difficult. We got pregnant 2 months after we got married, too. That didn't help much.
We knocked out kids, dude. That's why I had a vasectomy at 20. It was literally kids. So
yeah. So that adds a whole nother factor to it, right? Yeah. Kids and finances and all this stuff. But like, if we would have discussed some of the things ahead of time, it would have helped. But we've gone through these seasons of life. So like our first year was pretty good. I mean, we had some really doozies, but like overall it was good though, wouldn't you say?
It's great.
I mean, we were growing up. It's not very convincing.
It's really funny.
We definitely were growing up and getting to know each other on a different level than what we knew each other before. And then we went through a time where things were just great.
You got to understand, like I had major anger problems too, and I would flip on the script, like just boom, and I'd break something, throw something, lose my shit, and that's tough, right? And you don't know why, like what's going on, but there was a lot of that going on where I just was processing a lot of emotions with the freedom, right? Like,
but then we got to a phase where everything was great and it was great. Yeah. And then went through another phase where we had some very big blows in our life that were really, really hard to deal with. And because we were not communicating correctly and telling each other exactly how we were feeling, we were constantly at it because we were not, I didn't understand what he was saying. He didn't understand what I was saying. I wasn't trying to understand what he was saying. I was right. He was clearly wrong, and that was it. End of the day. And so, we had to come to a point at one point in our marriage, we had to come to a point and say, is this worth it? Is this really, really, truly what we want?
It's exactly what we started this little topic about with expectations, right?
And communication.
You're going to have expectations. We say get your expectations out to your significant other. This is what I'd like to do. I want to work out 3 times a week. That to me is a big thing. Like if that's a big thing to you, then you should get that out and say, I know you don't want to. I know you want to do this, that, and the other. But to me, it's important. How can we work around this? This is an expectation that I have in our relationship. Right?
Well, and the thing too is like that kind of leads into like build your spouse up. If that's something that you want, he wants to do, she wants to do, support them in their desires and their wants.
And that should always be an open line of communication to your spouse. You should always be able to say, can we talk for a second? It might piss you off or it might kind of surprise you, but this is something that is near and dear to my heart that I feel like we need to talk about. And just get it out and start talking about it. And most of the time, that person is going to be like, wow, okay, that's no big deal.
Well, and it goes the opposite way, right? So let go of what you're struggling with. Let your spouse know when you're struggling with something. Maybe your spouse can help you with that struggle, or maybe you have to seek some help and your spouse can help with you. Go with you.
So many people don't do that. So many spouses don't do that to their significant other and say, I'm alone. I'm not going to share it with her or him because you know what? They got their own thing and I'm mad at them about this or I have whatever. It could be a million things. They are there to help you. They're there for you to say, look, I'm not going to be with you if I can't be transparent with you. And this is where I'm at right now. We got to get into it.
Well, and sometimes people will not tell their spouse because they're afraid of hurting them, right?
Yeah.
But I think that
we let each other
if
down,
you don't say it, it's hurting them worse because you're not getting any better.
The whole relationship.
Sit down and say, look, I know this is probably going to hurt you and I don't want to hurt you. That's not my intention. But I know this is it could be something that could hurt you. But I need to talk to you about this. I need to be open and honest. I need your guidance, whatever it may be. It could be a bunch of different things. I just think that if you're open and honest with your communication, you're open and honest about your finances, that's like the biggest thing. Your spouse is not a mind reader. You want to make sure that you are communicating effectively. You have to work together as a team. If you're not working together as a team in this life, how are you going to raise kids together?
I just told her this on the walk this morning. We went for a walk this morning. It doesn't matter if you have 200 people on your team or 2 people on a team. It's still a team. And you signed up to be a team.
Yes.
And I said this morning. When there's players in the locker room, guys, girls, any sport, doesn't matter, and there's a player that's injured, the players get around that player and say, you know what? You're on injured reserve or you're out of the game or you're hurt or whatever, we got you. We're going to go take care of this. We're going to go out here and do it. You rest up. We got you. And your team should do that for you, right? We should do that for each other. And if you're injured, I got you. And even if you're injured for a long time, sometimes players are injured for 8, 10, 12 months, a whole season. It's okay. You're out the whole season. Your spouse might be out for a while.
It's funny because I feel like we've done very good at that. Like, I feel like there's never been a point in our marriage where we both have been down and out at the same time. Never. I feel like you're either up or down or I'm either up or down and we're there to help each other. And I think that's amazing. I think that's what really has helped us because we have had that open communication.
Yeah. I think that's what good, healthy relationships do. They counterbalance each other, the yin to the yang, right? People always talk about that stuff, but it's real, man. Like, you'll notice when your spouse is usually down or frustrated or challenged or a compression phase, right? There's a compression phase that every human goes through, and then there's an expansion phase that people go through. You'll know if you know right now as you listen to this, if you're in a compression phase, you're dealing with some things, you're trying to deal some things, work things out, or if you're on an expansion phase and you're ready to attack, you're ready to be creative, you're ready to go design, whatever it is. But your partners will go through expansion and compression phases. You got to let them go through that, man. Sometimes compression phases happen for years, literally for years. You'll see them come in and out, but they're processing some things. They're right. So when we talk team, I'm a big team guy because I was always pushing team and culture. And it can be 2 people, but your team, it's a team, man. we don't turn back from our team.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's the communication and the expectations of a team. And so when we work as a team,
Well, and it goes with not being disrespectful.
right?
You know, and sometimes
Yeah.
we don't realize we're being disrespectful. And I mean, not inside the home either, or in front of people. Like
Yeah.
there have been times in our marriage where I have said something to Darren, and he put me aside and said, "Don't ever talk to me that way again in front of people." I'm like,
I
oh,
said, please.
maybe you said please. I don't know. I don't remember. But I'm like, oh man, how did I talk to you? I didn't know. This is something I've dealt with my whole life. My parents always told me that I talked shitty, and I'm like, I'm not saying anything. I am not doing anything. And they're like, you need to listen to yourself. I'm like, I can't help it. I'm a passionate person and I talk like that. And so that's just something that's always gotten me in trouble. So I've always had to like, this is where the whole, okay, did you hear what I really meant to say?
Let's talk about this again.
You know, but you have to be careful because like I have learned this because he has called me out a couple times. Like, Jill, don't ever talk to me like that again in front of other people. And I'm like, dude, I did not mean to. Like, I did not mean to be disrespectful whatsoever. But like, be able to take those kind of comments from your spouse too. Like, that could have actually caused a really big fight, and it didn't. It never did.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it didn't.
Because you communicate.
I'm really surprised it didn't.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I didn't be like, what? I didn't say nothing. I didn't do nothing. Right? Oh, don't even.
You know what? We're talking about disrespect.
I know that was very disrespectful for you to do.
We're talking about disrespect, right?
Yes.
You know, the actions of yourself when your spouse is not around can be disrespectful or respectful as well, right? If you're out running around with your buddies, or you're out driving around, or you're not together, how you act when your spouse is not around, you can be respectful towards your spouse or disrespectful towards your spouse as well. There's a lot of disrespect and respect between a relationship that happens when you're together and when you're apart, how you act, right? That's a whole nother little thing too.
Well, and I think side note to that is, you know, it's your first year of marriage. Now it's about your wife. Your wife comes before your friends. And so
before anybody, your family,
yeah,
your friends.
You need to make sure that you're still taking that time. You're still dating your wife.
Yeah.
Just because you're married doesn't mean you stop dating.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something that, like, even when you have kids, I think that's something we did. It was very important for us to have a date night once a week.
Yeah.
Very, very important. And that did not mean that we had to go somewhere. That meant that when the kids were in bed, the TV's off, or if we chose to watch a movie together or whatever, that was our time to be together. You know, we could just go in our bedroom, shut the door, kids are all in bed, have our little snacks or whatever, and talk and listen to each other and have no distractions.
Yeah.
I think that is so, so, so important. We now are empty nesters, and we still, to this day, like to go on dates.
Yeah.
We don't go as frequently as we want to because we're home all the time together. So it's kind of like
we have dance parties when no one's here. I mean, we do. It's fun.
Sometimes.
We don't really advertise that, but it happens.
Oh my gosh. But, you know, I think it's just important to still make your spouse feel like you are still that person, because let's be truthful, right?
Yep.
You get married, those butterflies don't stay forever.
Mm-hmm.
That love doesn't stay forever either. Let's
Yeah.
get truthful here, okay? You got to constantly fall in love with your spouse. You got to work on it.
I hear so many guys say, oh, my girl's not affectionate to me, or she never comes around to me, blah, blah, blah. It is absolutely 100% ingrained in nature for the males to chase the females. And the women, they really want to feel chased. I'm telling you right now. You can ask any woman listening to this, and if the guys don't get it, you better figure it out. If you got a problem in your relationship, just start chasing your girl.
Okay, but it can go reverse, because if the guy is clearly not doing something, the girl doesn't want him. If he's doing something that the girl doesn't like,
oh, for sure,
she's like, no, you're a douchebag. I don't want nothing to do with you.
Well,
right
it
now.
could also be that the girl's kind of being a bitch too, and she doesn't want to chase him. So you know what I mean?
Sure, it can go either way. But that's the whole point, though.
I know.
Like sometimes it's not just about
it's
the
not
chase.
A singular thing.
Right.
This is going to make
sometimes
it.
Sometimes it's like, dude, I'm not very proud of you right now. Like, you're acting like a jerk. Like,
I need a minute.
You've had an attitude for a week. Like, why am I going to be attracted to you? What are you doing that's making me want to be attracted to you right now?
Yeah.
What, to fulfill whatever your needs are. No, I'm good. Thanks.
Got you, girl. Dang.
I'm saying it's not.
Next point, I think, is about time to.
Time together.
Yeah. That's it. I think it's huge.
Well, and the thing is too is like we all have our own love languages, right? So there's 5 different love languages, and if you guys have not taken the 5 love language test to find out what your top love languages are, I feel like that's so important, because you then know how your spouse reacts to certain things.
Never mind what you are. It'll help you understand you a little bit. But if you understand what your spouse is, then you know one of these 5 things to give your spouse so that they understand, oh, you're speaking my language, because we talked about that earlier. It's not about what you say, it's about what they hear.
So what are the 5 love languages?
The 5 love languages are this. You, as you listen, are one of these 5 that you.
No, there's people have several.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, like I think it's like top 3 or something like that.
So think about this, which one you are. Okay, what shows you love? Is it service? Is it receiving of gifts? Is it quality time? Is it, what is that? Words of affirmation, like you're a good boy. And the last one, which is a lot of people's, is physical touch, right? Surprisingly, some people don't, they're like, physical touch doesn't do anything to me. You got to buy me something, right?
Some people are.
Which is
gifts.
receiving of gifts, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you understand what your spouse is, or even your friends are, oh, I know my friend, they really like to receive gifts, and that shows them that I love them. Other people, you might have a buddy or a friend that say, they don't want gifts, they just want to add a boy. Words of affirmation. Bro, you're doing a great job. Okay, nice.
Well, the thing is, it's crazy because some people are really, really good at these things. Like some people are just like, we call them like the gift givers. Yeah. They're known as gift givers.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful, but not everybody that receives the gift receives the love that gift giver is trying to give.
So good. Like on Christmas, there's so many people that don't have a love language of receiving gifts. It might be service. In other words, like someone can cut your hair, or someone can help you on a project, or someone can cook with you. They're serving, they're helping you, right? That makes them feel loved. Mm-hmm. So Christmas time, they're probably the ones in the kitchen.
Right.
They're, service makes me feel. Gifts, I don't give a shit about gifts. But the kids, what do they want? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They want words of affirmation and gifts.
Well, and I have another friend who is very good with words of affirmation, like to the point where it makes me feel bad because I feel like, man, I don't think I do that enough.
Oh, because she's really good at giving words of affirmation?
Yeah. Like always. Like,
I'm going to put these in the description box below. They're really cool. You should look at them. But the five gifts are really good to understand.
5 love languages.
5 love languages are really good to understand.
There's a book. It's called The 5 Love Languages.
Yeah. But your kids are all different. They can all be different. Your spouse can be different. You can be different. There's
a test you can take in this book, and it's online everywhere.
Dude, we're gonna throw it in the description.
That will definitely help you figure out where you fall with all. It'll tell you what from top to bottom, all 5 where you're at. So we all have them somewhere. Like gifts of service to me, I don't really care. I'm not.
I don't buy her shit.
That's not gifts. That's a service.
Oh shit. I do buy her stuff.
I'm just saying, like, you will find out from 1 to 5 where you range on each one of these. Yeah. And it's interesting. It's very interesting to know, because if you don't know this, and you could be thinking that you're doing the greatest thing for your spouse, and he's just like, yeah, okay, whatever. I don't really care about that.
Yeah, if you're a guy and you're always buying your girl or your wife or your daughters flowers all the time, and they're not a receiver of gifts, they want words of affirmation, and you're never saying, I'm proud of you.
Or they might not like flowers. Yeah. And then that's not telling you. Like our daughter, she likes them now, but she used to not like getting flowers.
Yeah, one of our daughters did not like flowers.
She's like, what's the point? They're just going to die. I'm like, what? I love getting flowers.
But yeah, I mean, and I think people change too in their relationships with different, things they like to get, right? Mm-hmm. So.
But I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to say is the first year of marriage could be absolutely blissful, but it could also be rough. So don't go in there with high expectations. Don't think it's a fairy tale. Don't think you're, Beauty and the Beast and everything's going to be amazing. At the very end, you finally get married and everything's just, ooh, yay, rainbows and butterflies. It's not. There's a lot of things that are going to go on. You got to figure out your finances. You got to figure out how you guys communicate together. You guys are literally going away from your families and coming together and creating your own family. You have to decide together how you're going to create that family and where your boundaries are going to be and what your team is going to look like. And you also need to figure out from your spouse, you might not, there's things like that just because you dated for 5 years, or even if you've lived together, there still might be some things you don't know about because you're not connected in that way. But now you're married. That's like a whole different connection. So, and there does come stresses with it, knowing that we're married. Why do you think it takes guys so long sometimes to propose? Because they get so nervous. Why do you think they call it cold feet? Because people get so nervous about the word marriage because it's such a commitment. Yeah. And so if they already live with you and they're still worried about proposing to you or getting married to you, it's not because they don't love you. It's just it's a big commitment. It's a big change. Either way, whether you're just moving out of your parents' house or you've lived together, it's hard. So at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you are treating your spouse the way that you want to be treated. And I encourage you to go and take any marriage classes that you can find, even if your marriage is not bad. We took two of them and then taught two of them for several years. And I remember saying to this one couple in particular, they weren't married yet, but they were taking these classes. They were engaged. And I was like, you know what? Good for you guys, because man, I really wish we had these opportunities, because I've learned so much, and we'd already been married at that point for what, 20 years?
Yeah.
And it still was like, wow, I didn't make sense. Oh, that makes sense. I remember when we went through, that makes sense, because they talk about this thing called the crazy train, that you're just going round and round in circles. You're saying the same freaking thing over and over and over and over and over and over, but no one's jumping ship and saying, all right, you know what? Let's just agree to disagree. I don't want to fight with you anymore. Get off this train. We're just going to agree to disagree. And I've never heard, if we had that kind of language and communication in the beginning years of our marriage, holy crap. Some of the stuff we went through, because we went through some bombshell stuff in our life, we would never have gone through. I feel like we would have been able to communicate through those a lot better, don't you?
Well, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm 49 years old, but when I was 19 years old, if you would have told me that, it would have gone in one ear and out the other. But you don't know what you don't know. And to jump into a lifelong committed relationship with someone, there's a lot of cataclysmic things coming together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got baggage and history and wherever you are in your relationship, but you're coming together. And if you really, truly love each other, you don't know what you don't know. So don't just keep hashing all this stuff out. And if you just got into a relationship or a marriage and you're like, man, I want to have these conversations, but we've never had these conversations. Maybe it's one-sided, right? Maybe you want to have some of these conversations. You need to have a one-off with your spouse, right? You say, hey, we need to have a talk. Because some of these things are of lifelong value to you to make sure that you get in line. And you have to have a voice and say in everything that is part of your marriage. Your emotions, your finance, where you're going as a family, your kid raising, your cars, your house, careers, everything. It needs to be talked about, everything. So if you're not having communication with your spouse, you need to open that door and have that conversation. Say, I know we haven't in the past. We might have been together for a while, but we need to have some talks and get this stuff lined up so that we have a good, healthy relationship that lasts till our last breath.
Yeah, because, you can't look at it like, oh, well, if this marriage doesn't work, I'm just going to get a divorce.
No.
You never go into it like that. We don't even ever say the D word.
No.
That's just not even an option.
We never have. We never have.
Well, we did question at one point in time, do we really want this?
Right.
But
there's
we never really
it's
said.
It's never on the table. It's never talked about.
Right,
right. I think that's a good thing to have in life. I'll just drop it here and leave it. You don't need a plan B in life. You just need to do this one as best as you can, and it's going to work out for you.
And look, we're not saying, sometimes it happens. Sometimes the divorce does happen,
for sure.
And it probably needed to.
Yep.
And that is okay as well, but learn from it.
Yep.
Learn from it. So that when your next one comes along, you can be a little bit better. Maybe that is the right one. Because sometimes people think they found the right one and they didn't.
Well, you just got to get through all your no's to get to your yes. And if you got to get through a bunch of no's to finally find your yes, you can find your yes. That's a whole other thing.
That's a whole different thing.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. Hope that helped you guys. We're just talking the first year of marriage. There's a lot that goes on. So we'll talk more about relationship situations and issues in marriages as well. But we'll get back to some wedding topics too. So stoicevents.net. We're going to put the, what are those? Service, receiver of gifts,
love
quality
languages,
time, words of affirmation, and physical touch. We're going to put that in the description box. Do some research on that. That's really cool stuff.
Yeah, that'll help you a lot. We'll also put a couple links in here to the wedding classes that we took.
Yep.
So that if you're interested in looking at those will be available to you. And be on the lookout. We got some new stuff coming out with Stoic Events, stuff to help you plan your wedding if you still haven't got married yet. And maybe eventually in the future, do some couple coaching.
We're going to be doing some stuff. So if you guys have any questions at all about anything we talked about or any event planning that you have, you know where to go.